Very good day to everyone. And today we are going to look at the new topic, which is the insurance. So, first, we are going to look at the objectives. So, in this chapter, we are going to lay down some basic principles of law relating to the insurance, right? So, we are going to look at the types of insurance, the nature of a contract of insurance, the conditions and warranties, exemption clauses, and also the completion of proposal form by an agent. Right? So let's continue. We are going to look at the types of insurance. So here, if you look at these particular slides, the insurance in Malaysia is actually governed by Financial Services Act 2013 or FSA, and also some relevant common law principles. And for the Islamic insurance, we call it as Tafakul, which is actually governed by the Islamic Financial Services Act 2013 IFSA. So there are two types of insurance. Traditionally, insurance is divided into two main types. Number one is the life insurance, or what we call as life business. It covers the human's life, okay? And the purpose of this particular insurance is to give a financial protection upon death, and also saving or investment plan and the protection against illness or disability. That is on life insurance or life business. The second type of insurance is the general insurance or the general business, where it covers everything else that is non-life. For example, car insurance, fire insurance, property insurance, and travel insurance. So the Insurance Act 1963 previously divided insurance into two categories. However, it is now has been replaced by the Financial Service Act 2013. So let's review back on the key difference on the two types of the insurance. The life insurance will cover on life, death, and also health, whereas the general insurance will cover property, vehicle, and also accidents. Okay, so easy tips for you to remember. When we say life, it has to do with people, and when it's general, it is everything else other than life. Okay, so let's continue. We are going to continue with the common types of insurance and how they are grouped. Now, number one, common types of insurance. The most common types are life insurance, which it covers life, death, and also health. Next is marine insurance, where it covers goods transported by sea. Next is fire insurance, where it covers damages done by fire. Then number four is the accidents insurance, where it covers injuries due to accidents. Next is the motor insurance. It covers the vehicles such as car and motorcycles. And the next one is the aviation insurance, where it covers the aircraft and also air travel. And the last one is the travel insurance, where it covers the risk during travel. Risks such as loss, delay, or if there's any medical assistance that we need during our travel period. Overall, there are still two main categories, which is the life insurance and also the general insurance. All the others, such as motor, fire, travel, and so on and so forth, will fall under the general insurance. So the general insurance can be divided into two groups. The first one is the commercial lines. It is for business and cooperation. For examples like marine insurance and aviation insurance. Next is the personal lines, which is It is for individuals or public. For examples like travel insurance, fire insurance, and motor insurance. So simple example for you. If you buy life insurance, it is to protect your family. When you buy car insurance, it is to protect your vehicle. When you buy travel insurance, it is to protect you during your holiday. So there are many types of insurance, but all fall into either life insurance or general insurance. And in general insurance, we have commercial, which is for business, and personal, which is more on the individual. So let's continue with Islamic insurance, which is also, we call it as tafakul. Okay, so the word tafakul comes from the Arabic word kafala, which means to take care of each other. So this means a system of mutual help and protection. So the basic idea of takaful is where the participants contribute money into a common fund. If someone suffers a loss, the fund is used to help that person. So it is based on cooperation, sharing risk, and helping each other. There are three concepts in takaful. Number one is mudarabah, which is also called as profit sharing. It is actually a profit sharing agreement between the operator or the company and also the participants. So if there is profit, it is going to be shared between the both parties, and that is mudarabah. Next is tabarru or donation. Participants agree to donate part of their contribution. The purpose is to help other participants and to create a mutual protection fund. Next is wakalah or agency. So the operator acts as an agency or wakil. The operator manages the fund, performs the services, and usually will charge a management fee. So, simple example for you, if you buy a takaful plan, you contribute money into the fund, other members will also contribute, and if you had an accident, the fund will help you, and if there is profit, it is going to be shared among the participants, which we call it as mudarabah. Now let's understand the nature of contract of insurance and how it is actually formed. Number one, how insurance contracts are made. An insurance contract is usually formed in two steps. Number one, cover note. A cover note is a temporary insurance protection. It is given while the insurance company is still reviewing the application. So the person is already protected temporarily. Next, number two, proposal form, which also called the offer. The proposal form or the offer made by the person seeking the insurance. So it contains the personal details, information about risk, and also details of property or life to be insured. This helps the insurer decide whether to accept the risk or not. So, an important principle here, the offer does not come from the insurer. It comes from the person applying the insurance. We call them as insured. So, a simple example for you. You fill a proposal form for insurance. So, you are actually making the offer. The insurance company will either accept or reject the offer. So, insurance contract follows normal contract law where it starts from offer, and then when both accepts, then contract will form. But here, offers comes from the insured, not the insurer, right? So insurance contract starts with a cover note, which is the temporary protection, and proceed with the proposal form, which is actually offered by insured. So the key rules here is that insured makes the offer, not the insurer. So apply first, get temporary cover, and wait for the acceptance. Next, we are going to continue and complete the understandings of the nature of contract of insurance. So number one, acceptance of offer. Once the insurance company accepts the proposer becomes the insured, also called assured in life insurance. The insurance company becomes the insurer. So in this particular slide, it refers to the case between Patty versus Pearl. We are going to look at this case later on specifically. However, in this particular slide, this case supports the principles of formations of insurance contract upon acceptance, right? So a contract of insurance is an agreement where the insurer promises to compensate or indemnify the insured against any loss, damage, or risk, or to pay a fixed sum of money when a particular event happens. So there are two types of insurance obligation. Number one is indemnity, which is also called the compensation. The insurers pay based on actual loss suffered. This is common in fire insurance and motor insurance. The next one is the fixed sum payment. Here, the insurer pays a fixed agreed amount, which is very common in life insurance. So when there's any indemnity or if there's any damages happened, examples like car, you lost 5,000 ringgit, the insurance will pay 5,000 ringgit, and this is under indemnity. If under fixed sum payment, you have a life policy which amounting 100,000. Upon your death, the insurers will pay 100,000. So the key idea here is that insurance is risk protection. The insured pays the premium. The insurer promises to pay when any risks occur. Now let's continue with the case that we mentioned just now in the previous slide, Betty versus Pearl, 1937. So the key fact of this case, X took out a life insurance policy on her mother. The premium of that insurance policy is 10 pence per week. However, in the proposal form, the sum assured is left blank with X. Later, it is filed as £250 as an agreed amount. But the insurance policy was issued for £1,000, which actually a mistake. So X has been paying the premiums for more than 8 years. Later, the insurance company discovered the mistake. So what is the legal issue here? What is the main question in this particular case? Is the insurance company bound by its mistake? Examples, must it pay £1,000 instead of £250? The court decision says that the insurance company was not bound by the mistake. Why? Because the correct agreed amount was £250. The £1,000 was a clerical or administrative error. Therefore, the contract reflects the real agreement between parties, not the mistakes. So insurance contracts depends on the true intention of the parties, not focusing on the mistakes made in the document. So even if the document says £1,000, But if both parties actually agreed on £250, then £250 is the correct amount. So, courts will look at the real intention of parties. The insurer is not bound by clerical error. Right? So this is the final decision, the holding, okay, like what we have discussed just now. Yeah. So if we continue looking at this court held, when the insurance company inserted £1,000 into the policy, it was actually making a counter offer. Okay. So what is a counter offer? If you still remember, a counter offer means the original offer is rejected and a new offer is made instead. Here, X's original intention is £250, whereas the company issued a policy of £1,000. So £1,000 became the new offer. So X did not formally say, I accept, but X continued paying 10 pence per week for 8 years. And this behavior shows acceptance by conduct. So even without saying anything, the action, like paying the premium, shows an acceptance. So what is the final result of this particular case? A valid contract existed for £1,000. Why? Because the company made a counter offer and X accepted it by paying the premium. Therefore, insurer must pay £1,000 and not £250. So things for you to remember here is that counter offer replaces the original offer. Acceptance can be by conduct, which is the action here. Contracts follows what is accepted, not originally intended. So the conclusion here for this case, insurance company made a counter offer of £1,000. X accepted through action by making a payment for 8 years. And the final contract is £1,000. Now let's complete our understanding of nature of contract of insurance. So what is risks? The loss or danger that is being insured against. This is called the risk. What are the examples? Examples like car accidents, fire, theft, or death for life insurance. So, policy. When the insurer and insured enter into a contract, the document that contains all terms is called the policy. So, policy is a written proof of the insurance contract. It includes what is covered, amount of coverage, premiums, and also the terms and conditions. So it is under the Financial Services Act of 1930. Under Section 2, subsection 1, it defines the terms policy. In Section 128, it provides the rules relating to the insurance policy. So every insurance contract involves risks. Risk is what may happen in the future, and the policy, which is the written agreement. Now let's complete the final key concept in the contract of insurance. Number one is the consideration. In insurance law, the consideration is called the premium. This is the money paid by the insured, which is in return for protection from the insurer. So, simple example, you pay 1,000 ringgit yearly premium, and in return, the insurance company agrees to cover your car. So let's look at a case reference here, which talking about a case between Canning versus Farquhar. So this case supports the idea that payment of premium is essential to form a valid insurance contract. So there are two main parties in the insurance contract. Number one is the insured or assured. The person who takes out the insurance, who pays the premium and receives the protection is called the insured. Number two is the insurer, the party who accepts the risk and provides compensation when loss occurs. And looking back at the types of insurance, so there are two categories of insurers. Number one is the insurance companies. These are the formal organization and licensed companies such as Great Eastern Life, AIA, and so on. Next is the underwriters. Underwriters are individuals or entities who take on the insurance risk. Examples like common in marine or specialized insurance. So, simple example, you buy car insurance. So, you are insured. The insurance company is the insurer. And the payment that you made every month or yearly is called the premium. So let's continue with the contracts of indemnity. What is a contract of indemnity? A contract of indemnity means the insured is protected against loss or damage. The loss may happen or may not happen. If it happens, the insurer compensates the actual loss. So simple explanation, insurance is protections against any risk, and if there is no loss, means there will be no payment. However, if loss occurs, the insurance will pay. So you buy a car insurance and then accidents happened and you lost 5,000 ringgit. So the insurance will pay you 5,000 ringgit. And that 5,000 ringgit is what we call as indemnity. So the common examples of indemnity insurance are fire insurance, motor insurance, property insurance. And these only cover the actual loss suffered. Now, let's look at the doctrine of subrogation. It is a very important rule in indemnity. Now, after paying compensation, the insurer can take over the insured legal rights. Simple explanation, if someone else caused the loss, insurers pays the insured first. Then, insurer can claim from the third party. I give you a simple example. Ali's car is damaged by Budi. So the insurance will pay Ali 5,000 ringgit. Then the insurance company can sue Budi to recover the money. So if you look at these particular slides, they mention cases supporting indemnity principles. Newfield Peninsula, Malaysia versus the owners of the ship. Teo Kim Kian versus Lai Shen, Dato Osman bin Hashim versus KKW Center. All these cases are related to indemnity and subrogation principles. So, the insured, he should not make profit from the insurance. He will only get it back when the actual loss suffered. So, for this particular slide, indemnity is compensation for actual loss only. It applies to fire insurance, motor insurance, and so on. And it includes the subrogation, where the insurer recovers from the third party. Next, let's continue with a very important concept in insurance, which is the insurable interest. What is insurable interest? The law requires that the risk insured must involve an insurable interest. This means the person must have a real financial interest in the subject matter. Simple meaning for you, a person has insurable interest if they will suffer loss if the property is damaged or destroyed. An example for you, you own a car. If the car is damaged, you suffer a financial loss. Therefore, you has insurable interest. What are the examples of not insurable interest? Examples like Ali tries to insure Buddhist car. So if Buddhist car is damaged, Ali will suffer no loss. So therefore, no insurable interest and cannot be insured. So let's look at a case, Makara versus Northern Assurance Company Limited. The principle of this case is that a person must have a legal or financial interest, not just a connection. So under Financial Services Act 2013, Schedule 8, if there is no insurable interest, the insurance policy is void, meaning there will be no legal effect and the insurer does not have to pay. So, insurance is not for gambling. It must be based on a real possible loss. So, no loss means no insurance. Now, let's look at an important exception to the rule of insurable interest. Normally, a person must have insurable interest. If not, the policy is void. However, exception under law. Under paragraph 3, subsection 3, Schedule 8 of Financial Services Act 2013, even if a person does not have direct insurable interest, the law may still treat or deem the person as having insurable interest. So who is covered under this exception? The law allows a person to insure the following people. Number one, spouse or children, means husband or wife and also the children, considered as automatic insurable interest. Number two is minor under ward. A person who is under 18 years old at the time the insurance is taken. That is the minor. Number three is the employee. Employer can insure employee. Number four is dependents. A person who depends on the insured for maintenance or living expenses and also for education. So, even if there is no direct ownership or financial link, the law assumes that these relationships involve financial loss if something happened. So, simple example for you, you take insurance on your wife, your child, and also your employee. Even without strict proof of loss, law recognizes insurable interest automatically. So this rule exists because these relationships naturally involve financial support and also dependence. So, general rule here is that you must have insurable interest. However, there are exceptions where certain relationships are automatically covered. Examples like spouse or your child, minor, employee, and also the dependent. So let's go through important cases on insurable interest. Now, why case law is important? So these cases help us to understand how courts apply the concept of insurable interest when there is serious things happen. So let's look at cases on insurable interest. So here, looking at Cerak Asia Sendirian Berhad and Sepakat Insurance Broker Sendirian Berhad, and we have Ramatex Textile Industrial Sendirian Berhad versus Hong Leong Assurance Berhad. And we also have Nanyang Insurance versus Salbia. And we also have Syarikat Pembinaan Lida Sendirian Berhad and Talasco Insurance. And the last one is Luka versus Law. So if we look at all these cases will help us to know about the importance of insurable interest. If you look at the first case, Cerak Asia Sendirian Berhad versus Sepakat Insurance Broker, this case focused whether the party had a real financial interest. The second case, Ramatex Textile Industrial Sendirian Berhad versus Hong Leong Assurance, this case focused on the validity of insurance claim, whether insurable interest existed at the time of loss. The third one is Nanyang Insurance Company versus Salbia, where this case focuses on proof of insurable interest in the personal insurance. The fourth case, Syarikat Pembinaan Lida Sendirian Berhad versus Talasco Insurance. This case focuses on the insurance in construction and property who bears the risk and loss. Next is the Luka versus Law, Union and Rock Insurance. This case focuses on the requirement of legal or equitable interest. So all these cases reinforce one key idea. The insured must show a real possibility of financial loss. Without loss, no insurable interest or policy may be invalid. So simple summary for you, the courts will always ask, will the person suffer loss if the event occurs? If yes, insurable interest will exist. If no, policy may be void. So in conclusion, case law supports the rule of insurable interest, and the focus is always on the real financial loss. Now let's look at the renewal of the policy. Before the policy expires, the insurer will send a renewal notice, usually 28 days before the expiry. So the purpose is to remind the insured and to allow time to renew the coverage. So let's say your insurance ends on the 30th of June, which is around early June. The insurance company sent a reminder so that you can renew and will not let it expire. Number two is the return of premium. The insured may get a refund of premium if there is a total failure of consideration. So what does this mean? It means the risk never started, so the insured paid the premium, but no coverage was actually provided. Therefore, money can be returned. So you buy an insurance, but the policy supposed that to start next week. So before it starts, contract is cancelled. So risk is never existed. So you can get refund of the premium. So let's look at the case under Strickland and Turner. The principles of this case is that if there is a total failure of consideration, premium can be recovered. The key idea is that insurance is based on risk coverage. If there is no risk, no justifications to keep the premium. So the conclusion here is that insurer will send renewal notice, usually within 28 days. The premium can be refunded if there is no risk. or risk was never attached. So easy tips for you to remember: no risk means there will be a refund. For the coming expiry insurance, there will be a renewal notice to everyone. So let's look at the pre-contractual duty of disclosure. Here, under Section 129, Section 1, Financial Services Act 2013, the insurance law sets out the duty of disclosure, representation or the information given, and also remedies for misrepresentation. So let's look at what is duty of disclosure. Before entering into an insurance contract, the consumer must disclose all relevant and important facts. These facts helps the insurer, where he will assess the risk and decide whether to accept or reject. Next is the insurer's responsibility. Under paragraph 5, subsection 7 of Schedule 9, FSA 2013, Financial Services Act 2013, the insurer must clearly inform the consumer about their duty of disclosure in writing. This is important and it must be done before the contract is met, or the contract is varied, or when the contract is renewed. The durations of duty. The duty of disclosure, it continues until the contract is entered into, or varied, or renewed. So, simple example, you apply for insurance. Today, you fill the form. Before the approval, there is no health condition changes, okay? Or suddenly there is a health condition changes, okay? So you must update the insurer, okay? And then next, we are looking at the effect of misrepresentation. If the insured gives false or incomplete information, the insurer may cancel the contract or refuse to pay the claims. So insurance is based on trust and honesty. Both parties must act in good faith, or uberrime fidei. So, insured must disclose all material facts. Insurer must inform this duty in writing. Duty continues until contract is completed. And when there is a misrepresentation, serious legal consequences will be faced. Let's continue with the most important principles in insurance law, which is the utmost good faith. What is utmost good faith? Insurance contracts are based on uberrime fidei, meaning utmost good faith. This means both parties must be completely honest and truthful. What does this require? Both the insured and the insurer must disclose all material facts, no hide or misled information. What is the material fact here? A fact is material if it would affect the insurer's decisions to accept the risk, to set the premium, and to decide terms of the contract. Simple example for you. You apply for health insurance. You have a serious illness and you must disclose it. If you hide it, means there is a breach of utmost good faith. So this duty applies to both parties, not only the insured. Insured must tell the truth, disclose all important facts. Insurer must clearly explain the terms and not mislead the insured. If there is a breach of utmost good faith, the contract can be cancelled, avoidable, and claims may be rejected. Give you an example. You hide your medical history. Later, when you make the claim, the insurance company discovers the truth. So you may not be able to claim. Your claim could be rejected and the contract may be cancelled. So a case reference here, Gu Chu Lang versus Public Life Assurance Company Limited. This case confirms the importance of honesty and full disclosure. So insurance depends heavily on trust between parties because insurer relies on information given by the insured. Next, let's look at the material fact. A material fact is a fact that would influence a reasonable insurance or prudent in deciding whether to accept the risk, what premium to charge. Simple explanation, ask yourself, will this fact affect the insurer's decision? If yes, it is a material fact. Example, Ali applies for car insurance and Ali had previous accidents. This affects risk and premium. Therefore, this is a material fact. Case reference for you, Maxi Development Sdn Bhd versus Alliance General Insurance Malaysia. It is confirmed that material fact is something that influences the insurer's judgment. So, what are non-material facts? If a fact is not material, even if it's not disclosed, the contract is still valid. Example, you do not mention your favorite color. So this does not affect the risk and it is not a material fact, therefore no problem. So, very important rule here, if the insured fails to disclose a material fact, the insurance contract becomes void. So the rule connects to utmost good faith and the duty of disclosure. Must disclose all material fact. Let's continue on the important additional rules of material fact. Number one, age as a material fact. The age of the insured person is a material fact because it affects risk level and it affects the premium amount. But an important exception under Schedule 8 of Financial Services Act 2013, a life insurer cannot reject a claim or cancel the policy only because of wrong age stated. Simple example, you say you are 30 years old, but you are actually 35. This is a mistake. So the insurer cannot reject the claim completely. Usually, the insurer will adjust the benefit or the premium. Number two, no duty for unknown facts. A person is not required to disclose facts they do not know, facts they cannot reasonably be expected to know. Let's look at the case, Cathay Value versus Pacific and Orient Insurance Company. The principles of this case is that no duty to disclose unknown fact. So, simple example, you apply for insurance. You have a hidden illness, but you doesn't know about it. So you cannot disclose what you don't know. Therefore, no, not considered as a breach. Number three, misstatement in proposal form. If there is a false statement in the proposal form, the insurer may avoid liability or refuse the claim, especially if the statement is material. Examples like, you lie about your accident history, and this is a material fact. So the result is the insurer can reject your claim. So for material fact, you must disclose important fact. There is no need to disclose for any unknown fact. Examples, unknown fact. Next is age misstatement, usually not fatal, and however, if there is a false statement, it can result in void or affect your claim. So Age is a material fact, but it has protections under the law. There is no duty to disclose unknown fact. Misstatement of material fact is a serial consequences. Next, we are going to look at section 129, subsection 1 of Financial Services Act 2013. The law governs duty of disclosure, representations, and remedies for misrepresentation. Steps in obtaining insurance. There are 4 simple steps. Number 1, cover note. Temporary insurance protection. It is given while the insurer is still deciding. An easy idea for you, temporary cover first. Number 2 is the proposal. The applicant fills a proposal form. This is the offer made by the insured and must include all material facts, where you apply and declare everything honestly. Number 3, issue of policy. Once accepted, the insurer issues the policy document. Contract is now complete and official. Then number 4 is the renewal notice. Before the policy expires, insurer sends a renewal reminder, usually 28 days earlier. Insured can renew or let it lapse. So, the key summary here, insurance contract process. Number 1, cover note. Number 2, proposal or offer. Number 3 is the policy issued or acceptance. And the last one is the renewal notice. So, insurance follows a step-by-step contract process and must include honesty and disclosure, and it ends with policy issuance and renewal cycles. Now, let's learn about conditions and warranties in insurance contract. In an insurance contract, there are important terms. These terms can be conditions or warranty. Effect of breach, very important rule. If the insured breaks a condition or warranty, the insurers can deny the liability or refuse to pay the claim. Condition versus the warranties. In insurance, condition is the important requirement. Warranty is the strict promise that must be followed. Both are serious in insurance law. So if any terms is breached, the insurers may repudiate liability, where they will refuse to pay, and avoid the policy, where they will treat the contract as invalid. Give you an example. You have car insurance. The policy of your car insurance says car must be used for private use only. However, you use it for commercial delivery. So this is a breach. So the result, the insurance company may refuse to pay even if accidents happen. So, important case for you and for this particular slide, Suhaimi Ibrahim versus United Malayan Insurance and Public Insurance Company Limited versus Mutu. So both of these cases shows that breach of terms can allow insurer to reject the liability. So insurance contracts are strict. The insured must follow all terms carefully, and if there's any breach, they may lose the protection. Next, important protections for consumers in the insurance law. The main rule under FSA 2013, Schedule 9, Paragraph 10. The law states that any representation or statement made before the contract cannot automatically become a warranty. What does this mean? Before signing an insurance contract, the insured gives the information and that is the representation. Examples like the health condition, your driving history, and the property details. Now, before law was reformed, the insurers used to convert all statements into warranty. The result, even small mistake claim was rejected. For under the current law, which is under the Consumer Protection, under FSA 2013, a representation cannot automatically be treated as a warranty, even if the contract says the statement forms the basis of contract, still not automatically a warranty. This protects the consumer. Small mistake will not always cancel the policy and automatically reject the claims. The insurer must consider whether the statement is material and whether there is actual misrepresentation. I give you an example. Ali applies for insurance, says he is generally healthy, but he forgets minor past illness. Under the old rule, claim could be rejected easily. However, under the new rule, not automatically treated as warranty. Insurer must assess materially. So the key idea here is that the law distinguishes between representation, is where the pre-contract statement, and also the warranty, the strict promised. They are not the same anymore. So let's look at the exemption clauses in the insurance. What is exemption clause? An exemption clause is a term in the insurance contract that limits or excludes the insurer's liability. It tells you in certain situations the insurer will not pay. So the purpose of exemption clauses, these clauses are included because the insurer wants to reduce the risk and to avoid certain types of claim. Common examples for you: damage caused by war, damage caused by intentional acts, driving without license. So these may be excluded from coverage. If the exemption clause applies, the insurer is not liable, means he does not need to pay, even if loss happens. Simple example, you have car insurance. The policy states that no coverage if driver is intoxicated. Now, accidents happen and you were actually driving under alcohol. So the result, the insurance company can refuse to pay. So important case was mentioned here. Tan Keng Hong versus Fatima Abdullah, Union Insurance versus Chan Yao Yong. So these both cases confirm that if exemption clause applies, insurer is not liable. So key principle, insurance does not cover everything. It only covers the risk agreed in the policy. Any excluded risk will result in no compensation. Next, completions of proposal form by an insurance agent. The key rule here is that when an agent helps to fill in a proposal form, the agent is acting on behalf of the proposer and not the insurance company. Now, even though the agent works for the insurance company, when filling the form, the agent is considered your agent. So whatever is written is your responsibility. The proposal form contains material facts such as health information, risks detail, and your personal data. So these must be accurate and truthful. If the agent writes something wrong, it is treated as mistake of the proposer, which is you, and it's not the insurer's mistake. Okay, so example, you apply for insurance and the agent fills in no medical condition. However, actually you have illness. So even if the agent made the mistake, the law says Ali is responsible. So result, claim may be rejected, policy may be void. So the insurer must check the proposal form carefully before signing. Ensure all details are truthful. So, next, who is an agent or broker? An agent or broker is a person who helps arrange the insurance contract and assists the proposer. So the main duties, there are 7 key duties. Number 1, follow principal's instructions. The agent must follow the instructions of the principal or the insured. They cannot act beyond what is instructed. Number 2, act in person. The agent must personally perform the duty, cannot simply pass responsibility to others unnecessarily. Number 3, act in good faith. The agent must be honest and fair, cannot mislead or hide the information. Number 4, exercise reasonable care, skill, and diligence. The agent must perform duties carefully and professionally, where he will use proper knowledge and effort. Number 5, keep proper accounts. The agent must keep clear records of payment and transaction. Number 6, maintain confidentiality. The agent must keep client information confidential, cannot disclose without permission. Number 7, accepts only agreed remuneration. The agent must only take agreed commission and customary payment, cannot accept hidden or extra benefit. So, a simple example, Ali applies for insurance through an agent. The agent must follow Ali's instruction, give correct advice, and keeps Ali's information private. If agent misleads Ali, it is breach of duty. So, an agent must act professionally, honestly, and in the best interest of the principal. That's all for this particular chapter. I'll see you again in the next chapter. Thank you very much.